So I love using yogis as the explanation for almost everything. The yogis believed that the less breaths we take, the longer, the healthier our lifespan is. In the West, we can become very stressed. Well, I guess anywhere, no matter where you are, you can become very stressed on the earth plane. And the idea is that as we focus our breath and our body and learn to lengthen the inhale and lengthen the exhale, that we actually take less breaths over the span of our lifetime. And if you think about it, when we are stressed, there's rapid breathing. We're using just the top third of the lung to breathe, rather than infiltrating the breath into the expanse of both lungs. Now, the yogis believe, right, and as do the principles of Reiki, that we go back to this pranic life force energy, prana, that we were talking about earlier, that the breath is a gateway to accessing prana. So prana is in the air, but it is not the air. It is in food, but it is not food. It is in our bodies, but it is not our bodies. So you imagine you go to the store and you want to buy a salad, and one salad is all wilted and looks kind of sad. And then the other salad is like, buy me, I'm all fresh and crunchy. One salad obviously has more life force energy, and one salad's like, oh, this guy needs some help here, right? So, and a very simple premise, even understanding when we greet one another or we see people, you can get a sense of like when someone has a low life force energy and when someone's like shing, like full of brimming light, right? So some of us naturally are born with a capacity to circulate that energy without even trying. Like I believe there's a lot of people that are just born yogis and they've never even done a yoga class in their life. They don't study it. They just have that yogic heart and that yogic mind, that way of being. But some of us, we can use a little help to understand and to study. So, does that make sense? That prana is a life force energy that is really throughout all time and space, and that we can access it by breathing and by consciously laying hands on. When we consciously lay hands on, that universal life force energy moves through our crown, through our hearts, and out through our hands. It's as simple as that. And we're going to work to keep things simple this evening so that we can get as much done together as we can this evening. Okay, so prana is absolute energy present throughout the universe. It is a Sanskrit word that means absolute energy. It is life force energy present in all living beings and things. It is easiest accessed through the breath, is in air but is not air, cannot be created nor destroyed, it just is, exists throughout all time and space, yet is a way to go beyond time and space, beyond the world, our earthly stresses, our earthly pain, if you will. And the yogis knew this. They knew that there were different levels and dimensions that we can exist on. We can exist in a world, or in the world, being a human being and having to deal with different levels of stress, whatever our perception of stress is. They found that by bringing prana into the body through breathing practices, they began to trigger an elevated state of being that allowed them to be in the world and not of it. Have you heard of that saying? In the world and not of it. So when they consciously focused and concentrated, which is a part of meditation, through their breathing practices, they were able to be in the world and not of it. They were able to see through the veil of the pain and the suffering that exists, and have access to a more expanded way to live, a more expanded way to love, and would teach that. Does that make sense so far? Okay. So it exists throughout time and space, yet is a way to go beyond time and space when we really breathe. And tell me if you've had this experience before, when you really go, because I know there's some very adept meditators here and there's some beginners here, but when you really get into a deep state of meditation through the breath and you come out, nothing looks the same as when you went in. Has anyone had that experience before? Okay, yeah. So the yogis knew this. They spent time, they would do their hatha practice, they would do their breathing practices, and they would leave. They would be working on a different operating system, if you will. What happens, what I'm very excited about in my learning and what I want to share forward is what happens when we get into the alpha brainwave state that conscious breathing and meditation activates. The pineal gland, which is a tiny little gland right in the center of the brain, boop, 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 that's my sound effect, begins to, you heard that sound? Just kidding. No, but, well, maybe. But it begins to activate. Now, it is said that if we do not have practices where we are sharing consciously in love, if we are blocking love, and if we are not doing some kind of a spiritual practice whereby the pineal gland can be activated like meditation, that it calcifies. It actually grows calcium, and it gets hard, and it gets locked down. And this is like a natural fact where they have opened people's brains up, and it's just this hard, it's like a stone. Right? But really, it's this living, breathing, tiny pea-sized organism that when we meditate becomes boop, boop, activated. When the pineal gland gets activated, that's when we have a direct connection to heaven on earth, to see the light and the love in the world versus everything that we're probably shown through media, etc. And it's easier to allow that to be another option as we exist in the world. But we have to meditate. If we don't meditate, then all we're seeing with are these eyes. And these eyes are programmed for earthly living, for duality of right and wrong, black and white. When we meditate, what is considered a part of the third eye, has anyone heard that saying before? The third eye, which is generally located in the center of the forehead and is a part of a chakra system, which we'll talk about that's a whole other workshop. But that pineal is directly linked to this third eye, brow, which is your perceptual lens of how you see in the world, how you see the world, and how it is reflected back to you. When this gets turned on, the heart gets turned on. And the bridge from the heart to the crown is lit up in what my teacher would call the faith line. Because once you start turning on the higher lenses of perception through lighting up the pineal gland, your life will never be the same. You begin to accumulate experiences of peacefulness that like blow your mind, and you want to go back. You're like, how do I get back there? Or you have a very powerful healing session where you kind of get out of your mind, right, for the first time in who knows how long, and you actually really relax. And you're like, oh my God, I really needed that. How do I make that a part of my life as a constant? You meditate. You practice breathing. What I love about the pineal gland is it is your spiritual GPS, because it will tune you into your higher self, which is your wisdom self. It is the part of you that is ever compassionate, ever loving, ever forgiving towards oneself, and also has the ability to share that outside. And so as you turn that pineal gland on, and the heart can better and easier, without all the pain and all the stuff that we feel we've been hurt by in the world, there's a higher heart, the higher mind that opens and connects with our higher self. It's our spiritual transmitter and receiver. Boop, boop, right? So when the pineal gland is turned on from our meditating, as we move through the world, that spiritual transmitter and receiver is turned on, and it's booping, if you will, and it's picking up like a radar all the love and light that's happening, versus when we're just seeing through here and we're like, oh my God, the world sucks, we're all gonna die. We're just seeing with these eyes, right? And it's like we get stressed. That's the sympathetic central nervous system that gets triggered. And when we live in a constant state of stress, the body can not heal to the capacity that it can when we allow ourselves to turn on the parasympathetic system. And we're not going to get in that too deep because it can get dense. But you're either running on stress or you're running on the relaxation response, period. The wires do not cross. You are either living in the stress mode, fight or flight, or the relaxation response, digest and rest. There are no crossing of the two wires. Scientifically, you are either moving on one track or the other. You cannot be on both at the same time. So when we take those breaths and we breathe consciously and we develop a practice, we begin to accumulate the experience of what it's like to relax. Sometimes we don't even know. And like I even said something and James said it to me, and thank you for saying that, where I was like, I'm so tired. And he goes, honey, are you sure you're not just relaxed? And I was like, oh, thank you. Like sometimes we forget what it feels like. And because we're just, and I'm like, oh, it's a very good point. Where we're like, the lines get blurry because we're on all the time. And like when we finally do lay in bed or like read that book and have a cup of tea, it's like, God, I'm exhausted. It's like where's the relaxation? And the relaxation is why we meditate, to turn the parasympathetic nervous system on. So we get off of the stress track. As soon as the body gets the relaxation response, your digestion starts to kick in, which is the seat of our health. You might think the immune system, but the immune system has everything to do with how downstairs is flowing. Okay, so once the pineal gland is activated as well, it's the voice cord to the higher self, so we have an easier time listening to the still small voice that's like whispering, right? A lot of teachers say that the ego mind and the part of us that's like, do this, do this, do this, out of knee-jerk responses and probably pain or patterns from the past, is different from the voice that is the still small voice of your soul or your spirit or your higher self that has the wisdom, right, to distill to us. And it's all too often that we don't hear that still small voice because we don't make enough time to be quiet. And it's not wrong. No one's getting, no one's bad for not doing it. We're all learning, and we're remembering how to employ these practices more and more. So when we turn the pineal gland on, we are connecting to the universe, and we're creating a connecting link from the physical to the spiritual. So we become a bridge to heaven on earth. It also, pineal produces melatonin. So how many people here sleep very well? Okay, like a third maybe? 5 to 10 minutes, breathing consciously, meditating, putting yourself in the relaxation zone, the pineal gland gets recalibrated, and its ability to produce melatonin becomes activated rather than inhibited. If it never has a chance to do its work by giving them a chance to sort of re-energize itself, then it stops. It stops knowing when and where, when's day and when's night, if we're just going without those periods of time to stop and pause. Also, when the pineal gland is activated, it scavenges antioxidants or free radicals in the body. So it's a natural healing mechanism. When the pineal gland is on, boop, 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 you see people who you're like, you are not 60 years old, Marianne Williamson. She looks like 20. She's booping. She's booping. Like there's an anti-aging thing. And of course, what does that go back to? Because you're not living like stress. Stress wears the body down from the inside out, right? And it can do havoc to our emotions and our mind. We all know that, right? And it can just bring us into depression. And just, again, we're in the world. We're seeing with only these two eyes when really there's another eye in our brain. And as the third eye, as the sixth chakra. Now, again, when we don't activate it, it decalcifies, or it declines with age, it becomes calcified, and then we start thinking, my universe stops at the edge of my world. Because we're only seeing as far as the density of the third dimension and the worldly planes allow us. When we meditate, we remember there's more. There's love. And when we tap into love, we're like, like all the ways are open. We let go of control. Things happen that magically, beautifully, divinely. Otherwise, if we're like locked into a 3D dimensional way of seeing things, they don't have the opportunity to appear. Or we're just not tuned in. We're not booping with our spiritual GPS activated to put us in the right direction to be able to pick up the signals. Does that make sense so far? Mm-hmm. So we're going to meditate. And believe me, this is a part of it. But I know all too often I have students who are like, just show me how to meditate right now. It's true. They want to know right now. And would you got 5 minutes to breathe? No. Okay, then come back when you do. It's like, it's really as simple as that. The breath is what will take you out of this world while you're in your body still here and connect you to a higher plane that will allow you to be in the world in a so much more peaceful way, that is so much easier to navigate. And it is so important for our health and our healing, not just the body. Very important though, right? Without our health, health is vital. Equally so, the physical health, the mental and emotional state of our being, right? As a continuum, everything works together. So it's important to understand that. And then how basic and simple conscious breathing and meditation, cultivating a practice, especially in the morning, first thing, or at least, sure, if you want to have your coffee or read your thing, but, before you go out into the world and start making all those calls or dealing with the people or getting into your creative work, set up your booper, your pineal gland, if you will, so that you are naturally in tune and navigating from that higher space. When you meditate, a flood of calming neurotransmitters and hormones soothe your entire body. I mean, this is like, buy now and you'll get a free set of knives. It's like, why don't we meditate more? The immune system releases molecules of information that help complete circuits of healing throughout the body. So again, when we get into that alpha state, you don't have to go see a million healers. I mean, it's nice. We all have our thing, and believe me, there's a place for, Western medicine, Eastern, all of it. But if we spend more time taking care of ourselves while we are well, then we will have to spend less time taking care of ourselves being unwell. And meditation is a huge part of that. By allowing the body to get into that relaxation mode, parasympathetic nervous system, everything, it's like the body's like, finally, okay, she's at rest, go, liver, spleen, do this, brain, everything gets to heal itself for as long as we're in that mode. And if we're not sleeping well, then we're missing a huge continuum of our health and our healing and well-being. You shift to an alpha brainwave state. Okay, relaxation response is aligned. As this occurs, you reach the ideal conditions for healing that the mystics call the sacred space. So again, that's when you have kind of, to a certain point, to the best of your degree, let go of thinking, let go of thinking, let go of thinking about the world, and focus your awareness on breathing in and breathing out. And if every time we felt guided to work on something, we're all very creative people, we have projects, we're doing stuff. If every time you were like, oh my God, I have to do this, if you spent 1 to 5 minutes of that time that you're going to doing whatever that is, meditating first, taking those few breaths, you would actually have to do less in the world for things to manifest. And I'm not talking law of attraction, I'm talking law of the heart space. Because when we get out of thinking how things need to show up, when we drop into the feeling and connect it with the heart, you draw it to you naturally. Because your vibrational frequency will align you with the right people, places, things, time, whatever it is. Because you are attuning and aligning to your highest blueprint and capability. And so by defect, you don't have to spend time trying to manifest anything. For what is truly aligned with your higher good will simply show up. But if you're not tuned in and aware to see it and receive it when it does, then next time, hopefully you will be. Spiritual will. What is spiritual will? The ability to choose love over fear, over and over and over again. The more we meditate, the more that spiritual will gets stronger. Does that make sense? If we're only looking at the world through the 3-dimensional eyes, there's a lot of stuff to get upset and irritated about. When we develop that higher mind, that connection to heaven on earth, and we start to become that part of heaven on earth, we realize when we're confronted with situations, I can exercise choosing love, choosing to see a bigger picture, choosing to place love there rather than get into what's wrong with the world and how much fear we need to start being in about it. Does that make sense? Yeah. And remember, when you meditate, it's accumulative. So even if you meditate and you're like, oh my God, I haven't meditated for 4 months, don't worry, you've been building up the beads on the thread. And it's like riding a bike. Every time you go in, if you go in with sincerity and you really practice, you'll, just like riding a bike, you'll get back in and on right where you left off.